I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding, and every muscle in my body ached. As I tried to sit up, a wave of nausea swept over me, and I collapsed back onto the bed, shivering uncontrollably. "Elena, get up and clean this mess." Clayton's voice boomed from the living room. "I swear, you're just lazy. Can't even manage simple tasks while I'm at work." I dragged myself out of bed, my legs barely supporting my weight, and stumbled into the living room. Clayton was glaring at me, his eyes narrowed with disgust. The room was a mess, with dirty dishes piled in the sink and laundry scattered across the floor. "I'm sorry," I croaked, my throat raw and scratchy. "I've been feeling really sick." Before I could finish my sentence, Clayton cut me off. "That's no excuse. You're just lazy and unmotivated. I work all day to provide for us, and you can't even keep the house clean." His words stung, but I was too weak to argue. I tried to explain that I had a high fever and could barely stand, but he wasn't listening. He just kept berating me, his voice growing louder and more aggressive with each word. Suddenly, everything started spinning, and I felt myself falling. The last thing I heard was Clayton's voice, distant and distorted, before everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the couch, a damp cloth on my forehead. Clayton was nowhere to be seen. As I tried to piece together what had happened, the memories came flooding back. The sickness, the mess, the yelling, and then the darkness. It wasn't the first time Clayton had lashed out at me like that. Over the past year, his behavior had become increasingly erratic and abusive. The man I had fallen in love with, kind, caring, and supportive, had been slowly replaced by someone I barely recognized. I thought back to the early days of our relationship when we couldn't get enough of each other. We had met in college, and from the moment we locked eyes, it was like we were the only two people in the world. We were inseparable, spending every waking moment together, talking about our hopes and dreams for the future. After graduation, we got married, and everything seemed perfect. We had good jobs, a nice apartment, and a love that felt unbreakable. But then, slowly but surely, things started to change. Clayton became more distant, more critical, and more controlling. He would pick apart everything I did, finding fault in even the smallest tasks. Nothing was ever good enough for him. I tried to talk to him about it, but he always brushed it off or turned it around on me. "You're just too sensitive," he would say. "I'm only trying to help you improve." But it wasn't just the criticism. There was a darkness in him that I had never seen before, a rage that simmered just beneath the surface. He would lash out over the smallest things, and his words cut deeper than any knife. As I lay on the couch, my body aching and my heart heavy, I knew that something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, walking on eggshells, afraid of the next outburst. I had to find a way out, before it was too late. After my fainting spell, I couldn't stop thinking about how my life had taken such a dark turn. As I recovered in bed, memories of the early days with Clayton flooded my mind. The laughter, the joy, the unwavering support we had for each other. But those golden moments seemed like a lifetime ago, tarnished by the harsh reality of who he had become. I remembered the first time I saw a glimpse of his true nature. It was a few months after our wedding, and we were having a small get-together with friends. Clayton got into a heated argument with one of the guys over some trivial matter, and his face contorted into an expression of pure rage. His eyes were wild, his veins bulging, and for a moment I didn't even recognize him. After our friends left, I tried to talk to him about it, but he brushed it off as nothing. "Don't be so sensitive," he said, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. But the incidents kept happening, and the mask he wore began to slip more and more. The verbal jabs became more frequent, the criticisms more biting. He would find fault in everything I did, no matter how hard I tried. One evening, as I was cooking dinner, he came up behind me and started berating me for the way I was chopping the vegetables. "Can't you do anything right?" he spat, his words dripping with venom. I was so taken aback that I dropped the knife, narrowly missing my foot. Clayton just laughed, as if it were all some big joke. That's when I remembered the warning signs I had ignored from his ex-girlfriend, Emily. She had tried to tell me about his volatile temper and controlling behavior, but I brushed it off, convinced that he had changed. "He's not the same person he was with me," I had told her, my voice brimming with naive optimism. But Emily saw through his facade. "Believe me, that's just an act," she had cautioned. "The real Clayton will show his true colors eventually." How right she was. As I lay in bed replaying those memories, something inside me shifted. A fire ignited, a determination to take back control of my life. I couldn't continue living in fear, walking on eggshells, waiting for the next outburst. I knew that leaving him wouldn't be easy. Clayton had a way of making me feel small, worthless, as if I couldn't survive without him. But I had to try. For my own sanity, for my own safety, I had to break free from his toxic grip. From that moment on, I started documenting everything. Every insult, every criticism, every act of aggression, no matter how small. I kept a detailed journal, recording dates, times, and specific incidents, building a case against him. Whenever he berated me for not doing enough around the house, I would calmly remind him that I worked just as many hours as he did. When he accused me of being lazy or unmotivated, I would list out all the tasks I had accomplished that day, refusing to let him diminish my efforts. It was a daily battle, but I was determined to stand my ground. I started making plans, researching my options, and reaching out to friends and family for support. I knew that leaving him wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As I looked back on the person I had become, meek, submissive, a shell of my former self, I felt a surge of resolve. No more. I was done being a victim. It was time to take back control and reclaim the life that was rightfully mine. The days that followed were a constant battle, a tug-of-war between my newfound determination and Clayton's relentless belittling. Every morning I would wake up with a sense of dread, wondering what fresh hell awaited me. Despite working long shifts at the hospital, I was still expected to maintain a spotless home and have dinner ready the moment Clayton walked through the door. If anything was out of place or not up to his impossible standards, the verbal onslaught would begin. "What have you been doing all day?" he would snarl, kicking off his shoes and leaving them in the middle of the living room floor. "This place is a pigsty." I would calmly explain that I had just finished a 12-hour shift, but he would dismiss my explanations with a wave of his hand. "Excuses, excuses. That's all I ever hear from you." No matter how hard I tried, it was never enough for him. The laundry wasn't folded to his liking, the dishes weren't cleaned properly, the floors weren't shining bright enough. He would nitpick and criticize every little thing, his voice dripping with contempt. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the hospital, I came home to find Clayton pacing around the living room, his face flushed with anger. "Where the hell have you been?" he spat as soon as I walked through the door. "I told you, I had to work late," I replied, too exhausted to argue. "There was an emergency, and we were short-staffed." "Oh, that's convenient," he sneered. "You're always working late, aren't you? Or are you just out gallivanting with other men?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Clayton, that's not fair. You know I would never." Before I could finish, he cut me off with a harsh slap across the face. The force of the blow knocked me backwards, and I stumbled, clutching my stinging cheek. "Don't you dare talk back to me," he roared, his eyes wild with rage. "I'm the one who brings home the money, and you ungrateful bitch better show some respect." I stood there, stunned, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't the first time he had hit me, but it never got any easier. Each blow chipped away at my self-worth, leaving me feeling smaller and more worthless than before. As Clayton stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him, I sank to the floor, my body shaking with sobs. I knew I had to get out, but the thought of leaving filled me with terror. Where would I go? How would I support myself? But then I remembered the journal I had been keeping, the meticulous documentation of every insult, every slap, every degrading remark. I had evidence, proof of the hell I had been living in. With renewed determination, I picked myself up off the floor and made my way to the kitchen. I grabbed a bag of frozen peas from the freezer and held it against my throbbing cheek, wincing at the pain. As I sat there, icing my bruised face, a plan began to form in my mind. I couldn't leave, not yet. I needed more evidence, more ammunition to use against him. But this time, it wouldn't just be written words on a page. This time, I needed something more concrete, something undeniable. From that night on, I started secretly recording our interactions, capturing Clayton's explosive outbursts and vicious insults on my phone. Every time he raised his voice or his hand, I would hit record, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a dangerous game, but I was tired of living in fear. I was done being a victim. This time, I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, a family dinner to celebrate my younger brother's new job. But Clayton, as usual, found a way to turn it into a nightmare. From the moment we arrived at the restaurant, he was in a foul mood, snapping at the hostess and glaring at anyone who dared to make eye contact with him. I tried to diffuse the tension with small talk and forced smiles, but the dark cloud hanging over us was impossible to ignore. "So, Jake," Clayton said, turning his attention to my brother with a condescending smirk, "what kind of job did you manage to get? Flipping burgers, I assume?" Jake bristled at the insult, but he kept his cool. "Actually, I landed a position at a software company. Entry level, but it's a foot in the door." "Well, isn't that precious?" Clayton sneered, taking a swig of his beer. "Maybe one day you'll be able to afford a real job like mine." I could see the hurt flashing across Jake's face, but he remained composed. "I'm just grateful for the opportunity," he said evenly, "and I'm excited to see where it leads." Clayton let out a derisive snort, his lip curling with disdain. "If you're not careful, you'll end up like your sister, stuck in a dead-end job, slaving away for peanuts." That was the final straw. I had sat idly by, letting Clayton belittle and berate me for far too long, but I couldn't let him talk about my career, my passion, like that. "Excuse me?" I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. "I'm a nurse, Clayton. I save lives every single day. How dare you act like what I do is worthless?" For a moment, Clayton looked taken aback, as if he couldn't believe I had the audacity to talk back to him. Then his face contorted into a mask of rage, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "Watch your tone with me, woman," he growled, leaning across the table. "Or do you need another lesson in respect?" The threat was clear, and a chill ran down my spine. I opened my mouth to respond, but Jake beat me to it. "Don't talk to her like that," he said, his voice low and steady. "She's your wife, not your punching bag." Clayton whipped his head around, his gaze settling on my brother like a laser sight. "This is none of your business, kid. Stay out of it before you get hurt." But Jake refused to back down. "It is my business when you're treating my sister like garbage." The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Clayton's face was flushed with fury, his nostrils flaring as he struggled to control his temper. "Let's go," he snarled, tossing a handful of bills onto the table. "This dinner is over." As we left the restaurant, Jake pulled me aside, his eyes filled with concern. "Elena, what's going on?" he asked, his voice hushed. "That's not how a husband should treat his wife." I opened my mouth to brush it off, to make excuses for Clayton's behavior like I always did. But something in Jake's gaze stopped me. For the first time, I saw the situation through his eyes, the constant belittling, the veiled threats, the simmering violence just beneath the surface. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't keep living like this. "It's complicated," I said, my voice wavering. "But I promise I'll explain everything. Just not here." Jake nodded, his jaw set with determination. "Whenever you're ready," he said. "I'm here for you, sis. No matter what." As we drove home in tense silence, Clayton seething in the front seat while Jake and I exchanged worried glances in the back, I knew that the time for secrets was over. If I was going to get out of this nightmare, I needed all the help I could get. And who better to have in my corner than the one person who had been looking out for me since the day I was born? The next few days were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. After the disastrous dinner, I knew I couldn't keep living in fear any longer. It was time to take action. Jake was true to his word, and he became my rock, my unwavering support system. When I finally worked up the courage to tell him the truth about the abuse I had been enduring, he didn't hesitate for a second. "We're going to get you out of this, Elena," he said, his voice steady and determined, "whatever it takes." Together, we hatched a plan. We needed undeniable evidence of Clayton's behavior, something that would hold up in court if it came to that. Audio recordings were a good start, but we needed visuals too. "What if we set up cameras around the house?" Jake suggested. "That way we can capture everything. The insults, the threats, even any physical altercations." The idea made me nervous, but I knew it was our best shot. Clayton was becoming increasingly erratic, his outbursts more frequent and more violent. Who knew how far he might go if left unchecked? We decided to keep things simple. A few discreet cameras in the main living areas, nothing too obvious that might tip Clayton off. Jake handled the technical side, ordering the equipment and setting it up while I was at work. The first few days were nerve-wracking, waiting for something to happen. Every time I heard Clayton's heavy footsteps or raised voice, my heart would start pounding, and I would brace myself for the worst. And then, it happened. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, when Clayton stormed in, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell is this?" he snarled, thrusting a crumpled piece of paper in my face. It was the phone bill, with a series of numbers highlighted in bold. "Who have you been calling?" he demanded, his voice low and menacing. "Is it another man? Are you cheating on me?" "Clayton, no, it's nothing like that," I protested, trying to keep my voice steady. "Those are just calls to my brother. You know that." But he wasn't listening. In a flash, his hand lashed out, striking me across the face with such force that I stumbled backwards, clutching my stinging cheek. "Don't lie to me, you ungrateful bitch," he roared, advancing on me like a predator cornering its prey. "I work my ass off to provide for you, and this is how you repay me?" I cowered in the corner, my heart racing as he towered over me, his fists clenched at his sides. For a moment I was certain he was going to hit me again, or worse. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the rage seemed to drain out of him. He straightened up, smoothing his shirt and running a hand through his hair. "Clean yourself up," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You look pathetic." And with that, he turned on his heel and left the kitchen, leaving me trembling and fighting back tears. Later that night, when I was sure Clayton was asleep, I crept into the living room and checked the camera footage. There it was, captured in high definition. The false accusation, the physical assault, the cruel insults. I felt sick to my stomach watching it unfold, but at the same time a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. This was the evidence we needed, the smoking gun that would finally bring Clayton's reign of terror to an end. From that moment on, the cameras became my silent guardians, recording every twisted scene as it played out. And with each new incident, my resolve only grew stronger. Clayton had pushed me to my breaking point, but this time, I wasn't going to break. This time, I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. The day had finally come. After weeks of planning and gathering evidence, it was time to confront Clayton and put an end to his abuse once and for all. Jake and I had gone over the plan countless times, making sure every detail was perfect. We would sit Clayton down in the living room, away from potential weapons or breakable objects, and present him with the undeniable proof of his actions. The videos, the audio recordings, the documented instances of physical and emotional assault, we had it all. A damning case against him that not even his silver tongue could talk his way out of. As I waited for Clayton to come home from work, my heart was pounding with a mix of fear, and anticipation. What if he reacted violently? What if he tried to hurt me, or worse, hurt Jake? But I pushed those thoughts aside. We had come too far to back down now. This was my chance to take back control, to break free from the cycle of abuse that had consumed my life for far too long. When Clayton finally walked through the door, I steeled myself, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. "Clayton, we need to talk," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. He looked at me with a mixture of confusion and annoyance, clearly not expecting the confrontation. "What's this about?" he asked, setting down his briefcase and loosening his tie. "Let's go into the living room," I replied, gesturing for him to follow. He rolled his eyes but complied, sinking onto the couch with a heavy sigh. "All right, let's get this over with," he grumbled. That's when Jake emerged from the hallway, a grim expression on his face. Clayton's eyes narrowed as he took in the unexpected presence of my brother. "What's he doing here?" he demanded, his voice taking on an edge of hostility. Before I could respond, Jake spoke up. "We know what you've been doing, Clayton," he said, his tone firm and unwavering. "The abuse, the violence, the control, it all stops now." Clayton's face twisted into a sneer, and he opened his mouth to unleash a torrent of insults and denials. But Jake held up a hand, cutting him off. "Don't bother lying," he said. "We have proof." With a flick of his wrist, Jake pulled up the video footage on his laptop, the screen flickering to life with a montage of Clayton's worst moments, the shouting, the threats, the physical assaults. Clayton's eyes widened as he watched himself lash out, his face contorting with rage with each sickening blow. For a moment he was rendered speechless, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. But the shock quickly gave way to fury. "You've been spying on me?" he roared, leaping to his feet and sending the laptop crashing to the floor. "How dare you, in my own home?" Jake remained calm, unflinching in the face of Clayton's towering rage. "We did what we had to do to protect Elena," he said, his voice steady. "And now it's over. The police are on their way." As if on cue, the sound of sirens pierced the air, growing louder with each passing second. Clayton's eyes darted back and forth, his chest heaving as he realized the trap he had walked into. "You're making a big mistake," he growled, his voice low and menacing. "You won't get away with this." But his threats rang hollow, his bravado crumbling as the flashing lights of the police cars flooded the room. As the officers swarmed in, weapons drawn, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was finally happening. The nightmare was coming to an end. Clayton put up a token resistance, spitting vile insults and accusations as the officers wrestled him into handcuffs. But it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming, and for once, his silver tongue couldn't talk his way out of the consequences of his actions. As they led him away, his face twisted with impotent rage, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumphant satisfaction. For years he had controlled me, beaten me down, made me feel small and worthless. But not anymore. With Clayton's arrest, I had finally reclaimed my power, my freedom, my life. And as I watched his car disappear down the street, I knew that a new chapter was beginning, one where I would never again be a victim. The weeks following Clayton's arrest were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. But through it all, I clung to the knowledge that I had finally taken back control of my life. The evidence we had gathered, the videos, the audio recordings, the documented instances of abuse, painted a damning picture that even Clayton's high-priced lawyers couldn't refute. His attempts to discredit me and portray himself as the victim fell flat in the face of such overwhelming proof. As the court dates rolled around, I found myself steeling my nerves, determined to face my tormentor head-on. Jake was by my side every step of the way, a rock of unwavering support. When I took the stand, Clayton's eyes bored into me with a mixture of rage and desperation. His carefully cultivated mask of charm had slipped, revealing the true monster underneath. "You're ruining everything," he snarled as I delivered my testimony, recounting the years of emotional and physical abuse I had endured. "You were nothing before me, and you'll be nothing without me." But his words held no power over me anymore. I met his gaze with a calm, unwavering resolve, my voice steady and strong as I laid bare the truth of our twisted relationship. In the end, the evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. Clayton was slapped with a restraining order, barring him from coming within 1,000 feet of me or my family. The judge also awarded me a substantial divorce settlement, ensuring that I would be able to start fresh without the financial burden of our shared assets weighing me down. As the verdict was read, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Justice had been served, and Clayton's reign of terror was finally over. But the true vindication came in the weeks and months that followed, as the ripple effects of his exposure began to take hold. Word of his arrest and conviction spread like wildfire through his professional circles, and the once charming salesman found himself shunned and ostracized. Clients and colleagues alike wanted nothing to do with a man who had been exposed as a violent abuser. Within weeks, he was unceremoniously fired from his high-paying job, his reputation in tatters. The expensive suits and fancy cars were gone, replaced by a humiliating reality of unemployment and social pariah status. As for me, I found myself embarking on a new chapter, one filled with possibility and promise. With the weight of Clayton's oppression finally lifted, I was free to pursue my dreams and ambitions without fear or limitation. I threw myself into my work at the hospital, channeling my newfound strength and resilience into caring for others. My colleagues remarked on the change in my demeanor, the newfound confidence and determination that radiated from me. And in my personal life, I became an advocate for victims of domestic abuse, sharing my story and offering support to those still trapped in the cycle of violence. I knew firsthand the shame and isolation that came with being a victim, and I was determined to be a beacon of hope for others struggling to find their own path to freedom. As I stood at my kitchen window one morning, sipping a steaming cup of coffee and watching the sunrise, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. The woman I was a year ago, cowering in fear and drowning in self-doubt, felt like a distant memory. In her place stood a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had stared down her demons and emerged victorious. The scars of my past would never fully heal, but they served as a reminder of the strength I had found within myself, a strength that no one, not even Clayton, could ever take away. And as the warm rays of the new day washed over me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and optimism for the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew that I had the courage and resilience to face them head-on. My nightmare was over, and a new beginning awaited. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the city skyline. As I stood by the window, sipping my morning coffee, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me, a feeling that had been all too rare in the past. It had been 6 months since Clayton's arrest and the subsequent legal proceedings that had finally freed me from his toxic grip. 6 months of healing, of rediscovering who I was, without the constant weight of his abuse weighing me down. The journey hadn't been easy, of course. There were still moments when the memories would come flooding back, triggering waves of anxiety and self-doubt. But with the help of a supportive therapist and the unwavering love of my family, I was learning to cope, to process the trauma in a healthy way. And as the days turned into weeks and months, I found myself embracing a newfound sense of strength and resilience. The fragile, broken woman I had once been was slowly giving way to a survivor, a fighter who had stared down her demons and emerged victorious. At work, I channeled that energy into my nursing duties, approaching each patient with a level of empathy and compassion that could only come from someone who had walked through the flames of adversity. My colleagues remarked on the change in my demeanor, the newfound confidence that seemed to radiate from me. "You're like a different person," one of the nurses remarked over coffee one day. "It's like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders." I couldn't help but smile, thinking back to the dark days when that weight had felt suffocating, crushing me beneath its oppressive force. "You have no idea," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee and allowing the warmth to spread through me. Outside of work, I had become an advocate for victims of domestic abuse, sharing my story and offering support to those still trapped in the cycle of violence. I knew firsthand the shame and isolation that came with being a victim, and I was determined to be a beacon of hope for others struggling to find their own path to freedom. Speaking at support groups and shelters, I would recount my own experiences, pulling no punches in my descriptions of Clayton's cruelty and the emotional turmoil I had endured. But I would also emphasize the importance of staying strong, of never losing sight of one's self-worth in the face of such abuse. "You are not defined by what was done to you," I would tell them, my voice ringing with conviction. "You are a survivor, a warrior, and you have the strength within you to break free." And as I looked out over the faces of those brave souls, their eyes shining with a mixture of pain and hope, I knew that my words were making a difference. They saw in me a living embodiment of what was possible, a woman who had clawed her way out of the darkness and reclaimed her life. Of course, there were still moments when the shadows of my past would creep in, threatening to overwhelm me. But I had learned to confront those demons head-on, to draw strength from the battles I had already won. I would think back to that fateful day when Clayton was led away in handcuffs, his once intimidating presence reduced to a pitiful, impotent rage. I would remember the sense of triumph that had washed over me, the knowledge that I had finally taken back control of my life. And in those moments I would square my shoulders and lift my chin, letting the memories of my hard-won victory fill me with a renewed sense of determination. Because even though the scars of my past would never fully heal, they served as a reminder of the strength I had found within myself, a strength that no one, not even Clayton, could ever take away. As the sun continued its ascent, bathing the city in a warm, golden hue, I took a deep breath and smiled. A new day was dawning, filled with endless possibilities and the promise of a brighter future. My nightmare was over, and a brand new chapter was just beginning.
I want to be with you forever. Please marry me. I promise I will make you happy.
These were the words my husband said when he proposed. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. His words touched my heart so deeply. I felt enveloped by immense happiness, confident that together we could overcome any challenge. We would support each other no matter what, without a doubt. Then one day, he shattered this image.
I've fallen for someone else. I want a divorce.
What? Who could have imagined that my husband of 6 years would suddenly ask for divorce? My name is Angela. My husband Ken and I have been married for 6 years. It was just recently that we celebrated our anniversary at our favorite restaurant, toasting with fine wine. So why this? Wait, just wait a second. You've fallen for someone else? And you want a divorce? You're joking, right? I couldn't comprehend what was happening, and half smiled in disbelief. But his expression was dead serious. Nothing like his usual calm demeanor. Are you serious?
I wouldn't joke about something like this.
His voice was colder than I'd ever heard. But why? We have been getting along without any big fights. Why now? Tears started to well up. Had I been oblivious to the fact that he had found someone else, thinking we had a good marriage?
I want kids.
Huh? Kids?
I can't have them with you, you know. I want to divorce quickly and remarry her.
He's right. I couldn't have children. We discovered this 3 years into our marriage. Despite our normal intimate life, there were no signs of pregnancy. After a test, it turned out I was the reason. I was so shocked that I even considered divorce. I thought it would be better for him to be happy with someone else, since I couldn't give him a family. But he had reassured me back then.
I married you because I love you. Just being together is enough, kids or not.
I stopped blaming myself, saved by his words, and decided to enjoy our life together. I was so glad I married him. But why now? But you said you would be happy together, even without kids, remember? I appealed with a tearful voice. But his expression remained unchanged.
I only said that as a front. Who wouldn't want kids? I'm tired of being with you.
His disdain was apparent, a stark contrast to the man he once was. Tired of being with me. What does that even mean? I've tried to build a happy life despite everything. I wanted to scream at him, but his words were true in a way. But it's true, as he said, that I have been forcing him to endure this situation because of me. He must have struggled too, in his own way. I couldn't believe his comforting words were lies. I believed every word he said. I couldn't bring myself to blame him completely. Maybe it was my fault that he became this cold after all. He opened his mouth and told me as I was deep in thought.
Just give me the divorce. I've already promised to marry her. You're just in the way now.
In the way? Isn't that a bit harsh? I felt insulted by his words, in the way, despite feeling somewhat guilty before.
Why? It's the truth. I've spent 6 years with a wife who can't conceive. You should be thanking me.
He said this, conveniently excusing himself from any blame. Seeing this dark side of him that I had never seen before made me feel sick to my stomach. So you really felt that way? All your reassurances were lies.
Duh, obviously. I haven't been happy since finding out about your infertility. Every day was hell. I just wanted to divorce.
At that moment, I felt my feelings for him cooling rapidly. His blunt words made me realize he had no intention of repairing our marriage. He only cared about his future with his lover. Everything suddenly seemed ridiculous. Fine. If that's how you feel, we can get a divorce. But just so you know, I expect you to pay alimony. He responded to my proposal with scorn.
What? Alimony? I should be the one getting it. 6 years with an infertile wife. You've wasted 6 years of my life, and now you want alimony?
At that moment, I felt a surge of anger from deep within. Just because I can't have children doesn't mean he has a right to say such things. We are still legally husband and wife. There's no excuse for his affair. My disgust for him turned into hatred. I wasn't going to suffer through this alone. I refused to let things go his way. I was going to make him pay. Once I made up my mind, things moved quickly. First, I needed evidence of his affair. I couldn't file for divorce until I had it. I turned back to my husband. I'm okay with a divorce, but wait 2 weeks. There are things I need to prepare since this is so sudden.
Fine, but only 2 weeks. After that, we are definitely getting a divorce.
He replied impatiently and left the house. Later, I packed my things and visited the detective agency during a work break. I hired them to gather as much evidence of his affair as possible for a week. My husband, thinking I had accepted the divorce, often visited his mistress' apartment. They met up daily for work and shopped at famous brand stores, coming out with numerous bags. The shops were all women's brands, likely him splurging on her. Photos captured them both smiling and him looking infatuated. The agency told me they dined at expensive restaurants nightly, with my husband paying every time. His reckless spending was astounding. Where did he get all that money from? He was stingy with me, but generous with his mistress. However, this resulted in more evidence than I imagined, and the agency found it easy to gather. A few days after the 2-week period, I received a call while filling out the divorce papers. Hello?
It's me. Did you sign the divorce papers? Hurry up.
His tone was condescending. I'm doing it as we speak. I will file them later. He sighed heavily and said,
You are always so slow. Pack your things and leave quickly. That place will be a love nest for me and her. Take all your stuff with you.
He hung up without waiting for a response. A love nest for him and her? I thought, amused. He lived there with me all this time. I will take everything, don't worry. My revenge will be complete. I was frighteningly enjoying my revenge on him. I wouldn't turn back now. I was determined to make him suffer. I signed the divorce papers and was packing when I heard some noise from the front door.
You're still here?
It was Ken. Why are you here? He smirked triumphantly.
I've been living at her place. I only brought a few things with me. I came to get more clothes.
Perfect timing. I have something for you to sign. I handed him a document.
What's this?
I've been consulting a lawyer because I don't want us to continue arguing. It's a legal agreement about post-divorce matters. Read it carefully and sign. Despite telling him to read it carefully, he just casually and carelessly signed it right there, obviously annoyed by the hassle. And he tossed the paper at me.
You're so annoying. I won't bother you again, even without these stupid documents.
He muttered that and retreated to his room to get his things. I did warn him to read it carefully. I muttered with a smirk. I knew he'd likely skim over it, but I never imagined it would work out this well. I cheerfully continued packing up every single one of my belongings in the house. The next day, I submitted the divorce papers and had a moving company take my stuff to my parents' house. I planned to live alone eventually, but for now, I'd stay with them. I had already explained the divorce to them. Both my parents were furious at first, but they praised my plan when I told them. A few days later, Ken called sooner than I expected.
Hey, what the hell is this?
He shouted over the phone as soon as I answered. Well, hello to you too.
Quiet. Why is the house empty?
He was panicking, angry and upset, spewing nonsense. I patiently explained to him. Why? You told me to take all my stuff, didn't you? So I did just that.
But that's ridiculous. There is not a single piece of furniture or appliance left. We bought those with our savings.
He was ranting, out of breath. It seemed like he was conveniently altering his memory, so I explained it to him again. What are you talking about? Everything in that house was bought with my money. Have you forgotten how you were fired and we lived off my income when we first got married? He fell silent, remembering. Right after we got engaged and moved in together, he lost his job. So I bought all the necessary furniture and appliances. I even paid the mortgage until he found a new job. He seemed to remember and suddenly lost his earlier bluster. What's wrong? Gone quiet all of a sudden? Just remembered, did you? Oh, and by the way, the condo is part of the asset division. So if you ever sell it, remember you owe me half the selling price.
What? What is all about? You didn't say anything about this.
You signed it yourself, remember? I told you to read it carefully, but you were too lazy, and that's why this happened.
I signed it? You mean that paper I signed?
This bonehead finally realized. The paper he signed contained many important clauses, including property division and suing both him and his mistress for alimony. I explained this to him again, and he was speechless, sobbing over the phone. Why are you crying? You, the one who cheated, have the nerve to cry? I'm the one who's been hurt here.
But this is too much. What have I done to deserve this?
I was utterly disgusted with his inability to understand his own wrongdoing. I never realized he was such a pitiful person. You're really pathetic, you know that? Thanks for initiating the divorce. It was the right decision. I feel so much better now. I hung up on him, blocked his number, and made sure he couldn't contact me again. Through my lawyer, I proceeded to sue him and his mistress for alimony. Surprisingly, they broke up quickly. The mistress apparently had another main partner and was just using my husband for money. The mistress, who had treated him like a mere cash cow, was furious when I demanded alimony from her. "Why should I pay alimony? He was just a fling." She grudgingly paid and dumped him soon after. I never expected such a turn of events. It was a sweet victory for me. Karma is a bitch. My ex-husband, dumped by the woman he planned to remarry, was hit with a double whammy of alimony and emotional distress. He even took a leave of absence from work. Later, he called my parents' house.
"I've decided to sell the condo. I will give you your share. I was wrong. Please let's start over."
Of course, I had no interest in reconciling. "Please don't contact me again. If you do, I will call the police. Goodbye." I ended the call and blocked his number at my parents' house too. It turns out he was in debt from splurging on his mistress and is now being chased by creditors. No wonder he was so extravagant with her. Considering the amount he spent on luxury brands and fancy restaurants, it was obvious his salary alone wouldn't cover it. But to think he went into debt to spoil his mistress. His affair, divorce, and that became office gossip, and now he is being pressured to resign. Do I feel sorry for him? Not at all. It was a perfect revenge. I have no regrets. He brought this on himself. From now on, I will live for my own happiness. I vowed to myself.
Skylar, call an ambulance right now, please.
Well then, I will be heading home.
Huh? What are you thinking? Your husband has just collapsed.
This is how my mother-in-law Barbara confronted me, and my father-in-law Harvey looked at me with a puzzled expression. I explained everything to defend myself. "Harvey, the reason my husband collapsed is because of your wife. My name is Skylar. I'm a 32-year-old homemaker. I married Conrad 2 years ago. We met at work. He was a junior colleague at the same company, 3 years younger than me.
"Skylar, would you like to have dinner sometime?"
He asked me out first. "Oh, you mean with everyone? Sure, that sounds nice."
"No, I meant just the two of us."
He said so, looking straight at me. I had never been approached by a man like that before, and I initially declined. But he kept asking, and I eventually went out to dinner with him. Despite being young, he was calm, and we really clicked. After a few more dates, we started a relationship. A year later, he proposed, and we got married. I was so happy to marry the man I loved. After getting married, I quit my job. Although I received lots of congratulations from my colleagues, I soon began to regret marrying him. "Oh, good morning, sweetheart."
Did you make breakfast?"
"It's ready." He always seemed grumpy in the mornings due to low blood pressure.
"What's this?"
"Well, it's fried eggs, lettuce salad, and toast."
"I can see that, duh. I'm talking about the eggs. Why are the eggs runny?"
"Oh, well, I heard that runny eggs are easier to digest. You know, You once said you have a weak stomach.
Don't do anything like that. I want my eggs fully cooked. Remember that.
Noted.
Make it again.
What?
I can't eat this. Make it again.
He then threw the eggs I made into the trash.
I'm eating toast, so make it quick.
I was stunned.
What are you doing? Don't just stand there.
His harsh words snapped me out of it, and I quickly remade his eggs. He ate without a word, didn't clean up after himself, and started getting ready for the day. I was shocked by his behavior so soon after our marriage, but I had quit my job and still loved him. I didn't want to get a divorce so easily after being blessed by so many. I thought he was just not a morning person. That's what I told myself, and decided to see how things went. In the evenings, he was different, not grumpy like in the mornings.
Oh, fried chicken tonight. Nice.
It will be ready in a bit. I've also chilled some beer for you.
Great. I will shower first.
He was kind and cheerful, just like when we were dating. Dinner was enjoyable, and we had lively conversations. I was relieved, thinking he was just not a morning person. I was careful with breakfast, avoiding anything that upset him, and noting down his preferences to avoid repeats. Gradually, I got used to managing his moods and our distance in the mornings, and became perfect at managing our household. He seemed satisfied with our daily life. He was very kind in the evenings and on his days off, and we shared some quality time together. We were living a happy newlywed life, but it didn't last long. What? A transfer?
Yeah, it's still in the city.
I see.
But the commute will be tough, so let's move. We are renting now. Let's move to a condo near my office.
Well, I guess we could do that. I wasn't opposed, and I didn't really like the layout of our current place anyway. So we visited real estate agencies to find a new place.
How about this place?
Yeah, but it seems a bit expensive.
But it will make our lives more comfortable, right? Plus, it has a great kitchen. It will be easier for you to cook.
That's true. Let's go for it then. And that's how we decided on our new place. The new place was as comfortable as my husband said it would be. The new kitchen was super easy to use and made cooking a lot of fun. My husband's commute was shorter now, so he got to sleep in later, which made him less grumpy in the mornings. I was really glad we chose this apartment. However, a new problem arose. Skylar, I'm here. Barbara, what brings you here all of a sudden? What? Do I need a reason to come here? No, that's not what I meant. Then there's no problem. Can you make me some coffee right away? Saying this, my mother-in-law walked into the living room and plopped down on the sofa. I reluctantly made her coffee and served it to her. Where are the cookies to go with the coffee? I don't have any right now. Why not? You should always have some on hand. Well, but you came over unexpectedly. Oh, stop making excuses. If you don't have any, go out and get some. What are you waiting for? Chop, chop. Yes, right away. I had no choice but to drive out and buy cookies. When I hurried back, she seemed satisfied, enjoying her coffee with the cookies. Next time, be better prepared. Unbelievable. I didn't want her to come over again. Our new apartment was only a 10 minutes walk from my in-laws, so she started dropping by unannounced during the day. That night, I brought it up with my husband. Hey, Conrad, your mom dropped by today unannounced.
Oh yeah? What did she want?
Nothing really. She just made me go buy cookies and then relax before leaving. She even told me to keep sweets on hand for her next visit.
I see. Well, you should do as she says.
What?
Mom loves sweets.
Did you even listen to me?
Yeah, so you messed up, right? Be careful next time.
I was speechless. Even though my mother-in-law was being unreasonable, he didn't think she was at fault. Instead, he blamed me. Wow, hold on. It's really inconvenient if she keeps coming over like this, you know.
Why?
Well, she's your mother, and it's stressful. Plus, she criticized my cleaning today and even my taste in interior decor.
That's not criticism. It's advice. Listen to her.
He was getting visibly irritated, but I couldn't back down on this. I've been doing fine until now, and you never complained. She's nitpicking everything. If she keeps coming over and criticizing like this, it's going to be unbearable.
Are you talking shit about my mother?
No, that's not what I mean. But her frequent visits are a problem.
If my mom wants to come, let her come. I pay the rent here. You don't have the say.
He yelled this and locked himself in a room. I was just trying to discuss his mother, but now even he was against me. I was feeling very anxious about our future. And the next day, she came over again.
So, Skylar, I heard you upset my son. You're such a terrible daughter-in-law. He cares about me much more than you do. You're awful for making it sound like I'm the bad one. Now will you make me some coffee?
She said this with a triumphant look, turned on the TV, and lay on the sofa. Then, I cooked her lunch, cleaned, and did laundry while she nagged me incessantly.
You're such a useless daughter-in-law, and you call yourself a woman? You're so incompetent.
She kept berating me. She even started staying over for dinner often, criticizing everything about me to Conrad. He began saying terrible things like,
Maybe it was a mistake to marry you.
He started treating me terribly because of his mother, becoming as grumpy as he used to be in the mornings. Those days continued, and I reached my limit. As a housewife, would I just be scorned and treated like a slave by them both? It was around that time when a friend suddenly sent me a photo. Isn't this your husband? I was shocked when I saw the photo. In broad daylight, my husband was walking arm in arm with an unknown woman. No way. Normally, a man wouldn't walk arm in arm with a woman other than his wife. This had to mean he was having an affair. I immediately hired a detective agency to investigate, and evidence of my husband's infidelity quickly accumulated. Unbelievable. He berated me so much, yet he was the one having an affair. I was determined to make him pay and started preparing for a divorce. First, I needed to secure a job to support myself after the divorce. I started going to job interviews at various companies during weekdays, and eventually, I landed a new job. I also found an apartment for myself and arranged to move out soon. In the midst of all this, my unsuspecting husband announced,
My mom's birthday is coming up, so we are having a dinner party at her place.
I didn't want to go, but I thought this might be my last interaction with my in-laws. I decided it was better to quietly attend than to refuse and deal with my husband's anger. That weekend, Conrad and I went to his parents' house. Harvey, my father-in-law, greeted me warmly.
It's been a while, Skylar.
Hi, it's so great to see you again. He was the only reasonable person in my husband's family. but he often traveled for work and wasn't home much, so I rarely saw him except on occasions like this.
I've prepared a lot of delicious food today.
Barbara said this as she laid out a feast on the dining table.
Honey, this is amazing. You are suddenly outdone yourself.
The men were impressed, and Barbara looked proud. If you only saw this scene, you'd think we were a happy family. But knowing my husband and Barbara's true nature, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. I watched the food she prepared very carefully. She served it on large platters, and everything on the dining table seemed untouched. I waited until the men started eating before I touched any food. The food was delicious and seemed fine. I thought maybe this would end without incident. But then, my husband and Barbara started whispering in the kitchen. They had mentioned preparing cake and tea. Maybe they were planning something. I observed them even more closely. Then, I saw her put some powdery substance into one of the teacups. What could that be? It was undoubtedly intended for me. They were smirking. I wondered how I could get out of this situation. They started serving the tea and cake at the table. Then Barbara left to call her husband. That's when I got an idea. I made a phone call to a specific person. Conrad looked at his phone, which was in his pocket, and said,
I need to take this work call.
Before stepping away. I quickly switched my tea with his. He returned with a puzzled look. What's wrong? That was a quick work call.
Oh yeah, just a quick check.
He tried to play it off, but he didn't know that the call was from me. I had changed the name and icon of my app to his mistress' name and picture. He thought the call was from her. It was just a temporary ruse to get him away from the table, and it worked. Soon after, my in-laws came back to celebrate Barbara's birthday with cake. The cake seems untampered with, so I ate it. I pretended everything was normal and sipped my tea slowly. My husband and mother-in-law watched me with smirks, probably expecting something to happen soon. But after a few minutes, the unexpected happened to my husband.
It hurts.
He suddenly collapsed, clutching his stomach.
What's wrong, Conrad?
What's happening? Conrad, are you okay?
They were both shocked. My husband, in a faint voice, murmured,
Why me?
Barbara, rushing to my husband, turned to me and said,
Skylar, call an ambulance right now.
I was astounded at her audacity after she had set something up herself. Well then, I will be heading home.
What? What are you thinking? Your husband has just collapsed.
She confronted me like that. Harvey looked puzzled, said,
I will call an ambulance.
He hurried to call, and then turned to me asking,
Why would you say something like that? He's your husband. Are you going to abandon him?
Exactly. You heartless woman. The worst daughter-in-law ever.
She took advantage of her husband's accusation to berate me even more. I explained everything to defend myself. Harvey, the reason my husband collapsed is because of your wife.
What?
He was shocked. Barbara, looking flustered, said,
What are you talking about?
I ignored her reaction and continued explaining to Harvey. I saw her putting some powdery substance into one of the teacups. The cup was then placed in front of me. I had a bad feeling, so I switched it with my husband's cup. Then he collapsed like this. Barbara, did you put a large amount of laxative in it? She looked shocked as I said this. Harvey glared at her and demanded an answer.
Is that true?
Why would I do something like that? She's lying. Then let's call the police and have them investigate. The police?
Yes. Intentionally administering a laxative can be considered assault. It's a serious matter that could involve the police.
I didn't know that.
She inadvertently slipped up. Harvey and I didn't miss her admission.
You just admitted to putting the laxative in. Why would you do such a thing?
Well,
Harvey, your wife and son have been bullying me terribly.
What?
I have recordings of some recent incidents on my voice recorder. Please listen to them later. You will understand how they've been harassing me and why they might have spiked the tea. He sighed in disbelief. She then turned her anger on me.
How did you manage to switch the cops? My son was supposed to be watching.
That was easy. I called him, pretending to be his mistress.
What? My son is having an affair?
She clearly didn't know. Harvey was speechless. I have pictures as evidence. I planned to divorce him after today's meal, but I didn't know you two were planning something so awful. I'm glad I was cautious. Don't worry. I will make sure you both face the consequences. I left their house, hearing Harvey's angry voice at Barbara. An ambulance passed by, likely taking my husband to the hospital. A few hours later, Harvey contacted me. He apologized for what happened at the birthday party and discussed the future. He had scolded them and ensured that Conrad would agree to a divorce and pay alimony for the affair. He also said I could claim compensation for the emotional distress caused by their abuse. I gratefully demanded everything I was owed, including compensation from the mistress. Harvey, affected by the incident, decided to divorce Barbara. Having never worked, she ended up moving in with my ex-husband, where she found the mistress already living, leading to constant arguments between them. Conrad, burdened with hefty alimony, higher rent, and the cost of supporting 3 adults, was worn out both physically and mentally. With no allies at work due to his affair, he lived in isolated misery. Karma is a bitch. As for me, I successfully moved to a new place and started a new life. I'm working hard at my new job and enjoying the comfort of my new home. For now, I'm focusing on my career, planning to start studying for qualifications to further advance in my field.
Being a homemaker is great. You can take a nap anytime you want, and 3 meals a day are included with the house. If I were reborn, I'd want to be a woman too. Seriously, they call women like mom parasites. Ha ha ha, that's right.
My husband and Ricky enjoy such a conversation behind my back as I wash the dishes. So what about the dinner you two are eating? Who's cooking and who's making the choices? My name is Kathy. I live with my husband Michael and our university student son Ricky. Every day, I receive insults like parasite from both my husband and son. Admittedly, I'm currently unemployed and a homemaker, but there is a valid reason for becoming one. Before marrying my husband, I was actively working in a demanding job. On the other hand, my husband's job involves frequent transfers and business trips. He asked me to become a homemaker, and although I loved my job, I had to quit and focus on our family to be with him. His job often took us far from my hometown. Adapting to unfamiliar places was challenging at times, but we were reasonably happy as a family of 3. Fast forward 10 years from our marriage. Around the time our son entered elementary school,
my nomadic life is finally over. From now on, we'll be moving near my parents' place.
Eh? Near your parents' place? More than joy, surprise took precedence.
Yeah, I hope to be closer to my parents. It's easier for both you and Ricky to settle down, right?
That's true, but while settling down in one place as my husband suggested would be convenient, I couldn't bring myself to be happy about this fact. That's because my in-laws had disliked me since the beginning of our marriage.
A wife upon entering the household prioritizes her husband.
Since you became a daughter-in-law, you have to serve us too.
Every time they spoke, my in-laws would say this. I'm happy to have settled down, but now my in-laws are calling me frequently. What to buy, what to do with all the mother-child stuff. They take advantage of the fact that I'm a housewife and give me a lot of work. After several months of living like this, my patience had reached its peak. My in-laws treat me like a slave every day, and my husband doesn't help me at all, even when I ask for advice. I got tired of even looking at these faces and decided to take this opportunity to start working part-time. Just then, my parents-in-law had an accident while on vacation. Although the other side was unharmed, both of them are now in need of care because of the accident. Even in this situation, my husband's carefree attitude remained unchanged.
Kathy, you are a stay-at-home mom, so you can watch dad and mom at home, right?
Huh? What are you talking about? I responded to my husband's words with confusion. Take care of your parents? All by myself?
What's wrong with that? Ricky is already in elementary school, and my parents want to stay at home. A housewife just hangs around during the day, so why not do that?
You can't just ask me suddenly. I've never done caregiving, and taking care of both at the same time.
Stop making excuses. Who do you think allowed you to lead such a lazy life as a housewife until now?
Lazing around during the day? A lazy life? Didn't you ask me to quit my job in the first place, saying you wanted me to be a homemaker? I do everything around the house. Just how selfish can you be? If we didn't have a son, I would have definitely divorced you. I couldn't forgive my husband's words at that time. In the end, I ended up taking care of my in-laws. Their bodies are the only things restricted. Their minds are perfectly healthy. My in-laws, as if venting their pent-up frustrations, relentlessly bullied me.
Kathy, you are useless. Can't you do anything right as a wife?
Oh, I'm sorry. After sipping the tea I brewed, my father-in-law suddenly threw the teacup at me.
How can anyone drink such lukewarm tea? Honestly, even though you are a full-time housewife, can't you even brew a decent cup of tea?
The overbearing behavior wasn't limited to just my father-in-law. My mother-in-law was equally unbearable.
Hey, Kathy, isn't the bath ready yet? My body feels sticky and uncomfortable.
Just a moment, please wait.
Enough! Just hurry up and wipe my back. I can't reach it.
Like this?
Ouch!
Oh, sorry.
Honestly, your stress is too much. My son is unlucky to get such a useless wife.
Naturally, consulting my husband brought no help. On top of that, he casually says,
You are the wife, so it's natural to serve my parents.
Without offering any assistance. As I continued caring for my in-laws, I no longer felt anything. Though it was tough, my senses seemed to have become numb somewhere along the way. No matter how much I was verbally abused or had things thrown at me, I told myself that it would eventually end. I endured until that point. So, I convinced myself and managed to get through each day. Several years later, as dementia began, The care level for my in-laws increased, and they decided to move to a care facility. The burden on me, who had spent most of my day in caregiving, noticeably lightened. However, over these years, the disrespect from my husband and in-laws had taken a toll and influenced my son Ricky. Today, once again, Ricky mocks me.
Hey Mom, now that Grandpa and Grandma don't need care anymore, are you slacking off? It's annoying to see you comfortably eating on Dad's hard-earned money. Ricky, well said. Dad was fed up with Mom's thick-skinned attitude too. By the way, Mom, have you gained weight? Probably because she's only eating after finishing caregiving. Oh, did you think I didn't notice, Mom? Dad noticed too, but he couldn't bring himself to say it.
In front of me, the two speak impolitely without hesitation. If I retreat from the situation, they will deliberately insult me loudly enough to be heard. Every day was like this, and understandably, the stress had reached its limit. At such a time, a situation occurred that exceeded my capacity. While I was washing dishes after dinner, my husband and son began their usual conversation.
Being a housewife is nice, huh? You can take a nap anytime and have a house with meals provided. If I were reborn, I'd want to be a woman too. Totally. Mom, you're like a parasite. That's what they call it. Ha ha ha, that's right. Even if I get married, I don't want a parasite like you, Mom, with zero productivity.
At that moment, I heard a snapping sound in my head. A parasite. This is no joke. What about the dinner you all just ate? Who do you think does the dishes? And the clothes you're wearing? And the house you live in? Who do you think does the laundry and takes care of it all? I won't forgive them. I will make sure they regret pushing me this far. Determined for revenge, I started looking for a job the next day. It's a waste to spend any more time on these people. So, I thought of working for my own future. Fortunately, I quickly found a job that suited me. My previous job was a nurse. With my nursing qualifications and sufficient work experience, finding a job was easy. I'm sure Michael knows I'm a nurse. Don't they at least know that there are plenty of work opportunities out there, if you're qualified, or don't they? That night, I informed my husband and son, who were enjoying the usual conversation, that I've decided to start working from tomorrow. They briefly widened their eyes, and then burst into laughter.
Huh? What are you talking about? Who would hire a stay-at-home wife like you? Exactly. Haha, a clumsy old lady like Mom has no value anywhere. Anyway, it's probably just a short part-time job, right? It's a waste of time, so better not to bother. Mom can only handle household chores, you know. Just quietly follow Dad's instructions.
Looking down at the two of them, I firmly declared, I'm a full-time, permanent employee.
Eh? Full-time? Full-time? You are? Mom, they hired you full-time?
That's right. So from now on, I will contribute half of the living expenses. In return, I will appreciate it if we can split the household chores.
What's that about? Household chores are your job, right? Yeah, taking care of the house is Mom's duty.
To the shouting husband and son, I delivered the final blow. Huh? Household chores were considered work? I've never received any salary for it. Wasn't being a stay-at-home wife about having a relaxed life with the freedom to take a nap anytime, enjoying 3 meals provided, and leading a laid-back life? Unconvinced, They continued to grumble and complain, but I ignored them. The next day, I resumed working. I handled only the essential household chores and dedicated myself to my beloved job outside. Despite the challenges of returning to work after a hiatus, it was much more fulfilling than before. Since then, my husband and son began to conspicuously praise and flatter me in an exaggerated manner.
Making meals is more challenging than I thought. No kidding, Mom's cooking is seriously amazing. I haven't had her cooking in a while. I want some. Seriously, Mom is amazing. Even when it comes to laundry, it's got me Mom. I can only do basic stuff like separating darks and whites.
You think I'm going to say, it can't be helped? I glanced at my husband and son, who were trying to please me, and bluntly dismissed them. Huh? I'm working too, you know. How about you guys handle meals and laundry yourselves?
What the? What are you saying to your husband? We can't live without my income.
No, not at all. I never said anything like that.
Huh?
Yeah, my current salary is almost the same as my husband's. In fact, considering the size of the hospital where I work, I earn slightly more. My husband, who could no longer say anything, became somewhat quiet after this. But now my son, who had found a job, began to take advantage of me.
Hey, since you're working too, I don't need to contribute to household expenses, right?
My husband nods in agreement, lurking behind.
Right. Or maybe we should make her cover all the daily expenses. Saying we can live without my income is just arrogant. Dad, great idea. It increases our pocket money, killing two birds with one stone.
I was truly disgusted by their conversation, which was at an elementary school level or even below. Well, then do all the housework yourselves, please. Manage the living expenses within my personal budget.
Huh? Why is that so? The premise is you're a housewife, remember? That is right. Even now you're making your own choices on your behalf.
Before being a homemaker, I was an individual. I'm not your housekeeper.
Damn it! Besides, you should be grateful I even allowed you to work in the first place. That's right. I've been enduring Dad's nagging all this time, working hard as a student.
At that point, my husband nonchalantly took out divorce papers from his bag. He slammed them onto the desk in front of me. Staring at it, I asked quietly, "What is this?"
Can't you see by looking? It's a divorce notice. My section is already filled out. I can cut ties with a divorce at any time, you know.
You want a divorce?
I'm not saying that. You don't want a divorce either, right? I will give you 1 day. During that time, cool your head and think about what's best for you.
Understood. With a grinning husband and son in the background, I began to pack my things.
Hey, how are you going to handle this?
As my husband asked, I turned around and replied, I will stay at a business hotel near the workplace for a while.
Fine, understood. Take some time there to cool off.
And so, I headed to the business hotel. It wasn't just for a while. I had no intention of returning to that house anymore. I checked into the hotel and continued commuting directly from there the next day. This continued for several days. I was relaxing with a drink after returning home when I received a phone call from my husband.
Kathy, have you made up your mind? Both Ricky and I are hungry, so come back and make dinner.
I made up my mind, but I won't be coming back.
What? What are you saying? Your son and husband are waiting hungry for you. I'm waiting for you, okay? As a housewife, Can't you value your family?
We're not a family anymore. My husband, who did not understand the statement, said,
What?
in a confused voice, "Thanks for the divorce papers." I gratefully submitted them.
What are you talking about? You submitted divorce papers? Is this a joke?
A joke? You wouldn't joke about something like this, right? You and I are truly complete strangers.
What is this? You're doing whatever you want. What about Ricky?
He's about to graduate from college soon and can live on his own, right? He already has a job lined up.
Are you abandoning your family?
What about it?
Hey, wait a minute.
After saying just that, I hung up the phone. Since then, I kept rejecting his calls as they became a nuisance. To avoid causing trouble for my parents, I explained the situation to them and asked for peace. This became an opportunity for me to decide to return to my parents' house. Luckily, the branch of the workplace where I currently work is near my parents' house. I asked my boss to transfer me there. Now, I've rented an apartment near both my workplace and my parents' house, working full-time as before. Being a full-time nurse is already busy, and having my workplace close to home is quite convenient. On weekends, I visit my parents, and I've increased the time spent with them. Kathy, feel free to come and visit any time.
That's right. You've been working so hard all this time.
Thank you, Dad, Mom, both of you. My parents praised and encouraged me with those words. On the other hand, my ex-husband and son seem to have struggled with daily chores. And now, the house has turned into a mess. A week after leaving home, I received a message from my son.
It's impossible without you, Mom. We can't endure this kind of life anymore. Dad and I are both at a major breaking point. Please help us, Mom.
Looking at the messages from my son, it was clear the situation was dire. The mountain of empty delivery containers hints at the fact that no cooking has been done. A pile of trash bags and laundries here and there, and the floor covered in accumulated dust and more. It's become a garbage dump to a degree incomparable to the past. To such a son, I simply replied, "I hope you find your parasites soon." Whether that response struck a nerve or not, I haven't received any messages from my son since. I have no regrets now. I've done everything I could, putting in efforts to maintain familial relationships. Even so, if they look down on me to that extent, I'd rather be done with such a family. In the future, I want to indulge myself a lot. After enduring so much, I plan to live a happy life.
And then, suddenly, my mother-in-law, Stacy, stood up in front of everyone and grabbed the microphone, starting to make some shocking statements. I never thought I should have accepted a woman from a single-parent family as my daughter-in-law. She's not the prettiest bride, but please be nice to her, everyone. Don't worry, I'll take it upon myself to discipline her. The crowd was already in a state of shock, but Stacy, tipsy from the drinks, seemed oblivious to it. Then, a man standing in front of her stood up and snatched the microphone from her. Are you done? My name is Marie, a 34-year-old corporate employee. I've been working for the same company since graduating from college, which has been 12 years now. It surprised me how quickly time had flown. Most of my friends are already married or have children. I, on the other hand, have always been career-focused and I'm still single. But now I have a boyfriend whom I cherish. His name is Travis, and we've been dating for about a year. We met at a mixer and he approached me. Though younger, he has a mature, composed demeanor, but sometimes shows his playful, youthful side, which made me fall for him. Out of the blue, he invited me to a fancy restaurant. It wasn't an anniversary, so I wondered why, half expecting something special. Nervously, I went to the upscale restaurant where Travis was already waiting, waving at me with a smile. We talked about our day and enjoyed our meal at the fancy restaurant, which we hadn't done in a while. I was surprised you invited me to a place like this all of a sudden. I thought it would be nice once in a while. Actually, today marks exactly 500 days since we started dating. He showed me the screen of an anniversary app that displayed the number of days we had been together. I realized that this was its way of celebrating a milestone I wasn't even aware of. I had hoped for a proposal, but it seemed that wasn't the case. Still, I was touched that he cared enough to celebrate a day I hadn't noticed. I'm stuffed. I'm really satisfied with the delicious meal we had today. As I said this, he suddenly turned serious and looked at me intently. What's wrong? He swallowed nervously and slowly opened his mouth. Marie, will you marry me? Saying this, he took out a ring box from his suit's inner pocket and opened it to show me. What? I was caught completely off guard. Blinking in surprise, I was speechless for a moment. You mean everything to me. I want you to be my side forever. So, what do you say? Finally regaining my composure, I replied, Yes, of course, I'd be happy to. I said, smiling, suddenly feeling very shy and blushing. Travis was overjoyed, exclaiming, Really? Thank you! I hadn't expected him to catch me off guard with a proposal, but it's turned into an unforgettable, beautiful moment. We then visited each other's parents to announce our engagement. I come from a single-parent family, so only my mother was at home. My parents divorced due to a situation involving my grandfather, my father's father, who had accumulated a significant amount of debt. My father decided to divorce so that my mother and I wouldn't be burdened as he worked to repay the debt. Even after the debt was settled, they didn't get back together, and it had been 20 years since the divorce. Travis was nervous when we visited my mother, but she was so friendly and easy to talk to that he relaxed and they got along well in the end. I am so happy a kind man like you is marrying my daughter. Thank you. I promise to make her happy. Hearing him speak so confidently and gallantly in front of us, I felt a bit embarrassed. Well, look at you saying such things so smoothly. You're quite the man. Mom, you don't need to mention that. Why not? It was impressive. Our visit to my family home ended on a warm note. Next, it was time to meet his parents. Nervously, I went to Travis's family home. The greeting I received there was unexpected. I politely introduced myself to my mother-in-law, Stacy, at the entrance. Nice to meet you. I'm Marie. I look forward to getting to know you. I smiled, but she didn't respond and instead turned to Travis. Travis, welcome back. It's been a while. Come on in. She ignored me and welcomed them into the house. Reluctantly, I stepped into what seemed like a challenging future. Inside, Travis's father, Mike, was sitting on the sofa. Ah, you're Travis's fiancé. Nice to meet you. I'm his father, Mike. He greeted me with a smile, and I felt a bit relieved as I returned the greeting. He seemed like a kind person, chatting with me warmly. He asked me about my job and family life, while Stacy just nodded along disinterestedly. I politely answered his questions, glancing at her occasionally. Then, at an opportune moment, Stacy interjected. Hold on, I didn't know she was from a single-parent family. Can we really trust her? I was shocked by her sudden, blunt remark. Seeing me at a loss for words, Mike came to my rescue. Don't talk like that. In this day and age, there are many kids from single-parent homes. Besides, she's still in contact with her dad, isn't she? It's just that her parents don't live together, right? That may be, but I still can't trust her easily. If a child has problematic parents, they might end up causing the same issues. I won't forgive her if my son ends up divorced because of her. Seeing this, she huffed and headed towards the kitchen. Mom, don't get so upset, please. Sorry about my wife's attitude. Mike apologized to me. Stacy seemed like a difficult person, but Mike, being more mature and kind, seemed to balance things out. At that time, I still loved Travis and was unaware of his true nature. I couldn't imagine what was to come. Then, Travis and I started preparing for our wedding. While looking through various venue pamphlets and wedding magazines, I was filled with ideas and excitement. However, I was surprised when Stacy came along to the venue visit. Why are you coming with us, Stacy? With a frown, she replied, You don't seem to have a good taste, so I came to help. I was frustrated. She hadn't even seen my choices yet, and was already criticizing my taste. Moreover, it was strange for a mother-in-law to join a wedding venue visit. I suggested to Travis that we should do it alone, but he didn't send her away, saying, Mom's already here, and it's good to have advice from someone who's been through a wedding. In the end, we tried the venue's food and even did a wedding dress fitting with her. She kept imposing her preferences, disliking the menu and the dress I chose, suggesting alternatives to suit her taste. My wedding was turning into what she wanted, and I was really upset by it, especially since Travis didn't stand up for me. He agreed with everything she said, and my opinions were always outnumbered. I wished to at least choose my own wedding dress. Stacy continued to impose her opinions on the invitation design and the reception. I reached my limit, and one day I talked to Travis. I don't like your mother meddling in our wedding and turning it to her version. She's not listening to me at all, and I want you to tell her to back off. However, his response was disappointing. Mom's just trying to help us have a better wedding by taking time out of her schedule. I'm sad you don't appreciate that. I can't believe this. That's when I realized Travis was a complete mama's boy. I would lose my autonomy if I just followed along. I decided to take matters into my own hands and secretly arranged for a wedding dress without telling them. I reported to them that I had arranged the dress Stacy chose. Months passed, and the wedding day arrived. Marie, what's with the dress? It's not the one I picked. Predictably, Stacy was shocked to see that I had secretly chosen a different dress. But I was prepared. I need to assert myself and make my own decisions known to her. This is my wedding. I wear the dress I want. Her eyes widened in anger. What a disrespectful bride! Do you think you can get away with this? I won't be intimidated. Don't expect me to always follow your way. I stood my ground firmly. Stacy was fuming. Quiet! You're about to become a daughter-in-law. You can't defy your mother-in-law. Our argument escalated, and Mike hurried into the dressing room, hearing us. Today is about Marie. What are you thinking, yelling at the bride? His intervention calmed her down. But Marie, I don't want to hear it. The ceremony is about to start. Let's go. He said that, and forcibly took her out of the dressing room. I was relieved that she was gone. But something else was bothering me more. Hey, why didn't you just stop the fight when your mother and I were arguing so loudly? Travis was there, but didn't intervene or try to stop her. He just stayed silent. Well, it wasn't really a big deal, was it? What are you talking about? It was a huge argument. How can you say it's not a big deal when your wife and mother were fighting like that? As I pressed him, he suddenly slammed his hand on the table. Enough! This isn't important right now. I was taken aback by his sudden outburst. He realized he had lost his temper and became flustered. Sorry. I was just lost in thought. Lost in thought about what at a time like this? Actually, the company president decided to attend our wedding today. The president? Yeah, the department head has some urgent business, and when the president heard about it, he decided to come instead. Oh, really? And what's this lost in thought about? What do you think? It's nerve-wracking that president is coming. And if I make a good impression, maybe I could even get a promotion, you know? Is that how it works? I couldn't quite understand his thinking that a good wedding might lead to a promotion, but I didn't want to stir up more trouble, especially since the ceremony was about to start, so I let it go. The wedding ceremony began smoothly, and Stacy behaved, so I was relieved for the moment. Then we moved on to the reception. My friends praised the dress I chose, which made me glad I had picked it myself. The reception was going well, until Stacy caused the scene. As the MC announced a speech by a friend of the bride, Stacy suddenly stood up and walked towards the stage, staggering as if she were drunk. Then she grabbed the microphone and made a shocking statement. Let me have your attention for a moment. Thank you all for gathering here today for my son Travis, but his bride is just terrible. I'm sorry to say she's a disappointment. I was dumbfounded. What was she talking about? The room went cold with her words, but she didn't stop, continuing to insult me. I never thought I should have accepted a woman from a single-parent family as my daughter-in-law. She's not the prettiest bride, but please bear with her. I'll take responsibility and discipline her. The crowd was appalled, but Stacy, drunk, seemed unaware. Then a man in front of her stood up and snatched the microphone. This is intolerable. Can't you see the room is appalled? Who the hell are you? I'm speaking here. Give me back the microphone. She was furious at being interrupted. I'm the groom's mother. Do you think you can disrupt the ceremony like this? The man sighed. Are you done? Then Travis rushed over to them. Mom, what are you doing? This man is the president of the company where I work. What? Hello, I'm Peter McGill, president of XX Company. Mr. McGill, I'm terribly sorry my mother has behaved this way at a ceremony you graciously attended. I didn't come here for you. Dad, why didn't you tell me you were coming? Weren't you in Europe for business meetings? Travis and Stacy looked shocked as I approached the three of them. Wait, the president is your dad? Yes, he's my father. I came here for my daughter's wedding, not for you. My business meeting in Europe was rescheduled for the next week, and when I heard the department head couldn't attend, I flew here. I wanted to surprise my daughter. That's not a surprise. What happened to reporting, informing, and consulting like a good businessman? Sorry, I didn't expect to be lectured by my daughter here. The room finally burst into laughter at my father's words, but Travis and Stacy remained pale-faced. Seeing this, my father-in-law, Mike, hurried over and said, I apologize for the trouble caused by my foolish wife and son."
The room erupted in laughter at this exchange. Seizing the moment, I took the microphone from my father and announced a major decision. "I've just decided. I'm cutting ties with this mama boy and his mother. I will return the gifts to everyone who came here today. Please enjoy the rest of the time as a dinner party." There was applause from the crowd. Everyone probably thought it was better for me not to marry into a family with such a mother-in-law.
"Don't decide things on your own."
"Exactly. I won't allow a broken engagement." While Travis and Stacy were protesting, my father turned to them with a stern look and said,
"Travis, I can't forgive what your mother said to my daughter. If you're okay with losing your job, go ahead and yell at her."
No, please. I beg you, spare me that. Besides, it was my mother who was yelling."
"Wait, Travis, are you betraying me?"
Stacy clung to him, but Mike pulled her away.
"Enough. I can't stand it anymore. I want a divorce."
"Wait, please."
"I don't care. Live your life alone."
After apologizing to me and my father, he left the venue. I went with my father to my mother's table, and the three of us enjoyed our meal together. Travis apologized to my father, but he was completely ignored. After that, Travis and I broke our engagement. He angered my father, the company president, and was demoted to a regional branch. Unhappy with the prospect of no career advancement and demotion, he resigned. Stacy was indeed left by her husband and ended up moving in with her son. However, he was angry at her for causing the situation, and their relationship became strained and hostile. As for me, I continued to work hard and was recently promoted to department head. My parents, who reunited at the wedding, began to reminisce about old times and now meet regularly. Whether they remarry or not, it's nice to see them getting along as a child. I hope to find a partner with whom I can have a friendship-like relationship, like my parents. But for now, with my promotion and increased responsibilities, I'll focus on my career.
Happy birthday! Take good care of this gift, okay?
Thanks, Dad. A man hands a gift to a young girl, who accepts it with a smile. A woman, seemingly the mother, watches them fondly. The sight of the family enjoying quality time together seems to bring a smile to the faces of those around them. Yet, I can't bring myself to smile, because the man who appears to be the father is someone I know all too well. Approaching the family, I say, "Looks like you're having a great time, but today is the end of it." The man turns around and freezes upon seeing my face. I'm Alexis, 32, a nurse leading a busy life. I met my husband Sean, 2 years younger than me, when he was hospitalized with pneumonia in my hospital. Sean, sociable and liked by everyone, including nurses and other patients, drew me in with his ability to light up a room. Despite my more reserved nature, we quickly hit it off, dating and smoothly transitioning into marriage. He's a regular office worker, but as a nurse with night shifts, our schedules often conflict. Yet we've managed to support each other through it. We've been married for 5 years, but don't have children yet. We do want them eventually, but he always says, "Let's wait patiently, as children are a blessing." Moreover, his company hasn't been doing well lately, increasing his overtime and overnight stays. His travel for work has increased, drastically reducing his time at home. Working nonstop, he had me worried about his health. It's terrible how his company overworks his staff in these tough times. I thought he should consider changing jobs, but he had no such intentions.
"I've been with the company for a long time. I want to help it recover. I can't just abandon them by switching jobs now. I know it's tough on you, but Can you hang in there a little longer?
In response, I said, I'm fine, really. I'm just worried you might wear yourself out. You've been working non-stop lately. I'm afraid you'll collapse one of these days.
Sorry for worrying you. I'll be fine, though. I make sure to take breaks. Once things settle down at work, let's go somewhere together.
He seemed committed to his company, so I decided not to push the job change. Little did I know that it was all a lie. He seemed to find fulfillment in his work, and I too took pride in being a nurse. It's fulfilling to see patients I've cared for leave the hospital in better health. Some patients, overwhelmed by illness and stress, become frail. While severe cases are handled by counselors, we nurses often offer advice and a listening ear to those with smaller concerns. For example, an elderly woman worried about not hearing from her son, or a man anxious about his unmarried daughter. And there are even cases like, I got married but then quickly divorced. What should I do? While I can't always offer advice, just listening seems to help their healing. It's true what they say about health being influenced by one's state of mind. Sometimes just talking about your problems helps. And that's why I wish Sean would share his troubles and complaints with me. It might not solve everything, but it could at least provide some relief. While I was preoccupied with worries about him, trouble came my way. One day, Sean returned from work and announced he was going on a sudden business trip. That's so sudden, especially on our anniversary. We won't be able to celebrate.
It's unfortunate, but I can't help it with work being so busy. I'll be gone for about 3 days, so please get my clothes ready.
I was annoyed about his indifferent attitude. It wasn't his fault that work fell on our anniversary, but his lack of apology or remorse bothered me. I had planned a special dinner and wine for us since I was off work. Disappointed, but not wanting to complain, I asked him, "Where is this business trip to?"
California. There's a meeting with a client there.
Be careful. Could you let me know where you'll be staying? Just in case I need to reach you. At that, he started acting nervously. A sure sign he was lying. Unaware that I knew his tell after 5 years of marriage, he continued.
I might stay with a friend in California. Hotels are expensive.
Oh yeah? Then give me your friend's contact info.
No, you don't know them. It would be awkward. Just call or text me if you need me.
True to his excuses, Sean didn't give me any contact details, deepening my suspicions. The next day, after he left for work, I couldn't shake my irritation. Feeling gloomy, I called a friend in the next town to vent. While chatting, I felt the urge to meet up. Since we're both off, want to hang out? I suggested. She agreed, so I headed to her town. We met up around lunchtime and decided to eat at a restaurant. That's where we saw something shocking. While looking at the menu, we heard happy voices from a nearby table. Turning, we saw a family of 3, apparently celebrating their daughter's birthday.
Happy 6th birthday, Zoe.
Thank you, Mommy and Daddy. The father, beaming, hands his daughter a gift, which she happily receives. The mother watches them with a loving gaze. It's undoubtedly a scene of a happy family. I suddenly notice the father's face, and I'm shocked. It's Sean, who's supposed to be on a business trip. Why is he here instead of California? The resemblance is too striking to be a mere look-alike. He's even wearing the clothes I prepared for his trip. It's definitely Sean. Deciding to test the waters, I call his cell phone. The man steps outside to take the call, and sure enough, it's Sean who answers.
Hey, what's up? I'm at work right now. Don't call me suddenly like this.
It's indeed my husband. That jerk. I had so much to say, but I held back. Sorry, just checking if everything's okay over there in California. How is it?
Yeah. It's warm here.
Sean lying so easily. He said he was busy with work and quickly hung up, returning to his table. I was at my breaking point. Unforgivable. I approached the family's table and said, "Looks like you're having a good time. But today is the end of it." Sean turns pale as he sees me. Meanwhile, the girl's mother looks at me, puzzled. Who are you? What do you mean by the end? It seemed like the woman, his apparent affair partner, knew nothing about me. The girl looked equally puzzled. Sean said nothing, just hung his head in shame. I wanted to confront him right there. But considering the other customers and not wanting to spoil the innocent girl's birthday, I decided to let it go for now. Oh, sorry, my mistake. You have a lovely family. Happy birthday, young lady. I left the restaurant with my friend, who also knew Sean, and glared at him. We pretended to leave, but waited outside for them. After about 30 minutes, they came out, the woman and girl, happily talking about the present. Sean forced a smile, but seemed strained. My friend and I discreetly followed them. They eventually entered a large, fancy house with a big yard. It appeared they lived there. What was his relationship with them, and how had they met? I wanted to confront him immediately, but restrained myself for the sake of the girl. We have other things to prepare, so we decided to head back. My friend was even angrier than me about the situation. I'm in shock by his betrayal, but hearing my friend call Sean the lowest of the low lifted my spirits a bit. She offered to be there for me when we have our talk. I was grateful for her offer, but didn't want to get her involved any further, so I declined. Even so, she said, "I'm here to listen if you ever need to talk," and squeezed my hand tightly. It seems I was unlucky with my husband, but lucky with my friend. I tried calling Sean and sending him messages several times, but he ignored them all. Ignoring me won't change the fact that I saw him. He might try to claim that it was a case of mistaken identity, but I won't let him get away with that. The next day, I staked out Sean's mansion again. After confirming that the girl had left for kindergarten, I knew it was the right time. I rang the mansion's doorbell, and the woman from the restaurant appeared. She recognized me and asked in surprise, "Are you the lady from yesterday?" I didn't waste any time and said, "I apologize for bothering you yesterday. Actually, I recognized the man you were with and had to speak to him. Could you call him out for me?" The woman looked troubled, but eventually she called Sean. When he came out, he turned pale upon seeing me. His eyes darted around, showing his nervousness. Without hesitation, I confronted him directly. "Sean, what the hell is going on? Explain yourself." Then, unbelievably, he pretended not to know me.
I'm sorry, but who are you? Don't call me by my name so casually.
What? What nonsense are you spouting? Cut the crap.
Excuse me? I don't know any woman like you. If you keep this up, I'll call the police. Please, leave now.
He continued to feign ignorance, an unsightly act. I was boiling with anger. Just then, someone shouted from behind me.
You shameless, foolish son. What are you doing? That's right. How could you, with Alexis here?
Sean's face stiffened as he saw who was speaking.
Mom? Dad? Why are you here?
Indeed. It was Sean's parents who were berating him. Behind my in-laws, my own parents were glaring at him. I had called them, thinking it's better to have more support in confronting him. What followed was chaotic. My father-in-law hit Sean, and my mother-in-law beat him with her bag as he fell. My parents kept cursing him. The woman looked flustered by the scene. I just watched silently, making no move to help him. Finally, to avoid causing a disturbance in the neighborhood, the woman shouted, "This is causing too much trouble," and led us into the house. Once we calmed down, I asked about her and Sean's relationship. Her name was Amy, and the girl was her daughter, Zoe. Sean had been dating her with the intention of marrying her. Amy was divorced, and Zoe was her daughter from her previous marriage. It turned out that Sean had lied about being single and had been taking money from Amy, a wealthy woman.
The company went bankrupt, and I lost my job. I need some money while I look for work.
She had agreed to lend him money, believing they were going to get married. She not only gave him money, but also let him stay at her house. I then explained the situation to her. My name is Alexis. To be direct, Sean here is my husband. We have been married for 5 years. I showed her photos from our wedding as proof. She listened to my story in shock. She glared at Sean and shouted, "What the hell?" Sean looked down, saying nothing. Then his father yelled,
Don't just sit there looking pitiful. Speak up.
Sean finally began to shake and started explaining. He had actually been fired from his job. The reason was embezzlement at his company. He had been purchasing personal items with company funds and falsifying receipts to pocket expenses like travel and business trip costs. He managed to avoid police involvement by repaying the full amount embezzled, but this left his savings from before our marriage completely drained. Desperate for money, Sean targeted Amy, a wealthy client he had heard about, and charmed his way into her life. All the times he had claimed to be staying at work or going on business trips, he had actually been staying at her house. I was completely appalled. Not only had he cheated, but he had also been fired for committing a crime. His actions towards Amy were nothing short of marriage fraud. Hearing his confession, Amy was also furious. How could you do this to me? You approached me just for my money. I thought you cared about Zoe and were a good person.
Amy, please calm down.
How can I calm down? I thought you were single, but you're married. To trick me and take my money? That's fraud. I'm going to sue you. She had every right to be angry. She was a total victim in this. I also joined in, confronting Sean. I agree with her. You are truly the worst. I'm going to divorce you and sue you for infidelity. Be prepared for that. Hearing this, he began to panic and begged me.
Please, forgive me. It was just a moment of weakness. I never thought it would turn into such a big deal. I'll change my ways and work hard from now on. Please, forgive me.
I was appalled by his brazen plea. Could he really believe that after all he's done, his request would be granted? I unleashed my anger at him. Are you stupid or what? After all trouble you've caused, you expect forgiveness just because it was a moment of weakness? That's just too convenient. Ever heard the phrase, sorry doesn't cut it if it's a crime?
I'm really sorry, I am.
Enough. All you do is lie. I don't trust you anymore. I will definitely divorce you.
Upon hearing this, Sean collapsed and started crying. But everyone just looked at him with cold eyes. A few weeks later, I got divorced. I kicked him out of the house and demanded alimony. He was taken into custody by the police and found guilty of fraud. Amy also sued him for alimony. After being released, Sean ended up living in a rundown trailer, working all hours to pay off the alimony in installments. Disowned by his parents, he had nowhere to return to. I hope he truly reflects on his wrongdoings. As for me, I returned to my carefree single life. I thought I'd had enough of marriage for a while, but something interesting happened a year after the divorce. An elderly woman, a former patient I had counseled, said to me, "I would really like you to marry my son." I'm still thinking about it, but it seems like life is going to be interesting.